Dear ones, welcome back to this cycle of catecheses on the divine will. Today we will address the knowledge and the value of the hours of the Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ. As you well know, Louisa did not only write the 36 volumes of the books of heaven, but a very important writing is precisely these hours of the Passion that must accompany our daily reading. They are a support, they are an anchor, they are a place of refuge, a fortress in the difficult moments, which however there will be, in living Louisa's volumes, in learning, in studying, in discovering the gift of the divine will through the volumes. Therefore today, always from the 11th volume, we will take some passages that will make us understand the importance of these hours. They are undated, so there is no day. It's October 1914, October 29th, and then we have November 4th. What is the difference between the hours of the Passion that Louisa left us and what the Church has been teaching us for 2,000 years? That is, the pious practice, isn't it? The pious practice of the way of the cross. Behold, we have known very well, in these centuries, what did Jesus' humanity, that is, the external acts, the scenes that he lived, the pain that he felt. However, little or almost nothing Jesus says have we known of what was going on within him. That is, what was Jesus doing in his interior acts, while externally he was living his passion. Behold, this is revealed precisely in the hours of the Passion, which make this volume, this book, a unique one within the Christian tradition. Behold, we were lacking precisely the knowledge of how the divinity operated within the humanity of Jesus while he was living his passion. Now, these passages, instead, will allow us to reflect, in order to be able to understand it. I obviously invite you all to read the hours of the Passion. It is necessary to do at least 1 hour per day. Louisa did all 24 every day. Obviously, for those who have the possibility, glory to God if they can do them all. But at least 1 hour a day accompanies us, as I said before, on this journey of knowledge, on this path of the gift of the divine will. Let's start right from the passage of October 1914. The title is Value of the Hours of the Passion and the Reward that will be given to those who will do them. Louisa begins, I was writing the hours of the Passion, and I thought to myself, so it's important to understand where we are. Louisa is writing the hours of the Passion while she is at the 11th volume. Therefore, in the hour of the Passion we find, as it were, the state in which Louisa is. The knowledge that Jesus has communicated to her up to the 11th volume. And therefore, also from this perspective, we will surely find more reflections, more references to the redemption than to the third fiat. Although, as seeds, the Lord has also left in the hours of the Passion many signs, many clues. Indeed, even more so, because they are precisely a practical guide to be able to live the divine will, repeating the same acts that Jesus did while he was living his passion. And so, there is a great difference, which I have often spoken about, between internal acts and external acts. Therefore, even if Louisa has not yet spoken about this in her volumes, because, I repeat, she is at the 11th when she writes this Jesus already, there makes us understand the difference between the external act and the internal act, and how the internal acts are free, and how the internal acts more easily can become divine, thus obtaining the effects of such acts. I was writing the hours of the Passion, and I thought to myself, how many sacrifices in writing these blessed hours of the Passion, especially in putting on paper certain internal acts. This is the point that only between me and Jesus had passed. What will be the reward that he will give me? And Jesus, making me feel his tender and sweet voice, told me, my daughter, as a reward for having written the hours of my Passion, for every word you have written, I will give you a kiss, a soul. You see, Louisa always tries to understand what the purpose is for doing things. This is a point that we have underlined many times, to understand if it is a human act or a divine one. What makes the difference is the intention and the purpose of each act. So what is the purpose, says Louisa, for which you are making me write these hours? What will you give me in exchange? You see how Louisa, apparently, may ask for something human. But it is only an appearance, precisely because the gift that Jesus immediately gives her is a divine gift. What is this gift? A reward for having written the Passion, such that, for every word you have written, I will give you a soul. Every word, not for the entire book, every word written on these volumes, on these hours of the Passion, on this book. And so, you see how the interest immediately shifts to God. God is interested in souls. Certainly, we have it by reflection of God, but nothing comes to us directly. Therefore, being a divine purpose, here it is, to do the hours of the Passion, because Jesus has said, it is precisely His will, and to live these hours of the Passion in His will, with His will, for His will, causes our act of deepening, of reading, of sharing, of participating, of identifying with the life of Jesus, in the works, in the acts that Jesus performs, causes precisely these acts to become divine acts. And my love, Luisa continues, this is for me. And what will you give to those who will do them? Here, the interest for others right. This is very typical of Luisa. Luisa is always in her attitude of being a victim soul for the world, and therefore she worries about her brothers and says, okay, this is for me. I thank you for this. But what about the others? And Jesus immediately replies promptly, if they will do them together with me and with my same will. For every word they will recite, I will also give them a soul. You see that Jesus specifies it is clear in this discourse, if they will do them together with me. So we must live them fused in Jesus. Therefore, the act of fusion is always the act of beginning our day, and also the main act for those who want to live in the divine will. So it's to do them together with Him, to let Him do them in us, to accompany Him, to do them together, and moreover with my same will. How do we know if we are doing it with our will or with His will? That's always the crux of the matter. What is the intention with which we do them? What is the purpose? Then, we can also say that many, perhaps, ask this question right. But can I set the intention to do the hours of the Passion for a person? Yes. If you really need to call that person as a beneficiary of these acts, of this reading, do it. However, you must know that all divine acts benefit all men of all times. So they are all included. There is no need to say it explicitly. However, if one really needs to do it, one starts from that person. For example, I want to read these hours of the Passion for my son, for my brother, for my husband, for my father, whoever it may be, a friend, an acquaintance. But what I want for him, I want to apply to everyone. Obviously, you know that everything, in the divine will, always works according to the capacity of those who can receive, or rather to the attitude of those who can receive. Therefore, God always reaches everyone. However, the way of receiving divine acts depends on the dispositions of each one. And so Jesus says, if they will do them together with me, with my same will, for every word they will recite, I will also give them a soul. Therefore, the same promise He makes to Luisa, He also makes to us. And this is another sure sign that Jesus is not speaking of a gift for Luisa, but is speaking of a gift for humanity, because all that He has done in Luisa, He wants to repeat in the souls who want to live the divine will, and starting from the hours of the Passion. Therefore, Jesus says, He will give a soul to them too, because all the greater or lesser efficacy of these hours of my Passion lies in the greater or lesser union they have with me. And by doing them with my will, the creature hides in my will, and acting my will I can do all the good that I want, even for a single word. Therefore, the greater or lesser, as it were, union, will make sure that there will be greater or lesser efficacy. Therefore, here it is. The efficacy is not always the same, but depends on those who do these acts. You, in general, must know that all the acts of the divine will have precisely a deferred efficacy, which depends on knowledge. Different, because it depends on the knowledge that each one has. It is clear that whoever, as it also happens humanly, right? Whoever knows more about the instrument, reaches the goals for which they use it with greater ease and also with greater effectiveness. And so it is also in the hours of the Passion. The more knowledge one has, the more effects one can achieve. And this depends on the greater or lesser union they have. What does it mean, greater or lesser union they have with me? How much their will is truly fused with mine? How much they have decided to give me? Who 10, 30, who 50, who 70, who 100? Therefore, the more we have fused in the divine will, the less of our own will there is in our life, and the more His has taken space. This space can be more or less complete. I don't know if you remember, we also talked about it in some volumes at the beginning, where Jesus calls them the closets of the soul, where something of our own always hides. They are those places that we leave for ourselves, without letting God in. Now, if God has taken complete possession of the soul, it is clear that the union of the two wills is also greater. We can safely call it a fusion of the two wills, so that one is no longer distinguished from the other. And by doing so, it is clear that the efficacy is also greater, because it is more freedom for Jesus to operate within us. And therefore, by doing them with my will, the creature hides in my will, and acting my will in a single instant, Jesus can do what he can do for all eternity. Since there is no time in God, therefore, one act, one word, one gesture is enough for him to accomplish all his work. And this, Jesus says, will happen every time you do them. Every time you read, for each word that you meditate on, that you recite, I will give you a soul. Imagine the potential of these writings, the potential of the hours of the Passion. How many words are there in the writings of the hours of the Passion? And for every word, a soul. Another time, Luisa continues, I was complaining to Jesus. Because after so many sacrifices in writing these hours of the Passion, there were so few souls who were doing them. Look, Luisa is practical, isn't she? She says, but nobody knows these hours of the Passion here, so these benefits will be few, as are the people who recite them, and look at how different God's reasoning is from ours. My daughter, do not complain. Even if there were only one, you should be happy. Would I not have suffered all my passion, even if only one soul were to be saved? So too with you. See, Jesus wants to teach Luisa his way of thinking, and he wants to teach it to us too, so that we never let ourselves be disturbed. Never let there be fear within us. That this divine will not reach its goal. It belongs to God, and God will know how to defend his word, his will. The whole point is whether or not we manage to live these writings, this knowledge. You see, during Luisa's time, the people who knew her were few, but today the hours of the Passion are perhaps among the most well-known writings in the world, the most translated into various languages. So Jesus, who sees eternity as if it were all present, clearly already knew the people, the names, and who had to do these hours of the Passion. One should never omit doing good because few take advantage of it. This is a great lesson. Good must be done because one wants to do good. Even if there were only one person who receives this good, we should not stop doing it. All the evil, obviously, is for those who do not take advantage of it. And as my passion made my humanity acquire merit, as if everyone were saved, despite the fact that not everyone is saved, because my will was to save them all, and I merited according to what I wanted, not according to the profit that the creatures would make of it. So you, according to how your will has identified with my will to want and to do good to all, so you will be rewarded. All the evil is of those who, being able, do not do them. Here, according to the profit that the creatures will make of it. Here, we try not to miss this opportunity. This is a moment of grace in our life, in which the Lord is calling us to share his own life. Because, you see, the Most Holy Trinity has decreed that this gift descend upon earth. However, it could not force the creatures precisely because of that gift, which is the free will of each one. So where is the difference? That God can come today, or he can come in 1,000 years. For God it makes no difference, since time does not exist in God, but for us it makes a big difference. If we, who have been called, have put our hand to the plow, have turned back and have renounced this gift? Or are we precisely the chosen ones to be able to live and spread this gift? This depends on us. God cannot impose it on us. These hours, Jesus says, are the most precious of all, because it is nothing more than repeating what I did in the course of my mortal life, and that I continue in the blessed sacrament. Repeating, not remembering. Repeating means putting into action again, and therefore as if Jesus, at this moment, were living his passion, and thus also producing the effects of his acts. Remembering, keeping it in memory is simply, so to speak, knowing better what happened, but it would remain in the past. Instead, in God there is no time. His divine acts are like an echo, which continuously repeats itself. When I hear these hours of my passion, Jesus says, I hear my own voice, my own prayers. Despite hearing our voice and our prayers, that is, us who read his prayers, he takes them as his own. I see my will in that soul, which is to want the good of all and to make reparation for all. This is the purpose for which the hours of the Passion are done. If the purpose is divine, the will is divine, because intention and purpose are the life of our actions, and the life of our actions is the will. Now, if this intention and purpose are ours, it is clear that there is a human will, acting. But if the intention and purpose are divine, and therefore if he wants the good of all and wants to make reparation for all divine purpose and divine intention, then the act becomes divine. And I feel myself carried to dwell in it in order to be able to do in her what she herself does. Here is the fusion. God who comes to do what the soul does and the soul that does what God does. Oh, how I would love if even just one person per country would do these hours of the Passion. Despite Jesus having said that he would give us a soul as a gift, look here, he just can't do without it. He has to give us some other gift. His love has no rest. He always invents new things. Oh, how I would love if even just one person per country would do these hours of the Passion. I would feel myself in every country, and my justice, greatly offended in these times, would be partially appeased. We are in 1914. 110 years have passed since this writing. And here Jesus says, if someone in a country were to do the hours of the Passion, it would appease my justice towards that country. So he gives us another protection, another lightning rod, right? These hours of the Passion are, in fact, also considered the lightning rod to divine justice. I add, says Luisa, that one day I was doing the hour when the Heavenly Mother gave burial to Jesus, the 24th hour, and I followed her to keep her company in her sorrowful desolation to pity him. I didn't always do this, only sometimes. Now I was undecided whether or not I should do it. And bless Jesus, all love, as if he were begging me, said to me, my daughter, I do not want you to neglect it. You will do it for love of me, in honor of my mother. No, look, pay attention to what it is, so you can understand well what a divine act is. Know that every time you do it, my mother feels as if she were in person on earth repeating her life. So that act, which Our Lady lived 2,000 years ago, becomes actual in the moment in which we do the 24th hour, and so with all the other hours, and therefore she receives that glory and love that she gave to me on earth. She receives. She does not remember having received, but she receives in the same instant in which we do it. And I feel as if my mother were again on earth, her maternal tenderness, her love, and all the glory that she gave me. Therefore, I will hold you in account as a mother. Now it is clear that if these hours of the Passion were done in all countries and Jesus, in all countries, saw his mother again on earth, repeating what she did 2,000 years ago, you can well understand that divine justice would certainly be appeased by the real presence of Mary on earth. And that is why Jesus made us the promise. First, because now he explains to us that promise of appeasing divine justice. How can it be right? How can it happen that it is appeased? Precisely for this reason, with the presence of the Mother in the 24th hour. But you know that Mary is present in many other hours of the Passion of Jesus. And not only that, he says, therefore, I will hold you in account as a mother. So whoever does the 24 hours with this intention of Jesus to make the mother repeat her acts, to actualize, we could say, her acts. At the moment when we read these hours, it is clear that he will hold us in account as a mother, as a mom, with all the effects that derive from this, obviously. Therefore, embracing me, I felt myself being told softly, my mom, my mom. And he suggested to me what the sweet mother did and suffered in this hour, and I followed her. And from then on I have never neglected it, helped by her grace. So you see, it is precisely Jesus who calls Luisa my mom, who recognizes her as a mother. Because beyond the external form, that is, the humanity of Luisa, which was obviously different from the humanity of Mary. However, the substance is that of the divine will, and in that substance he sees in that life Luisa present. And in those who will want to do it with his own will, he sees instead the essence of the divine will. That is, what the divine will possesses in itself. And what does it possess? All the acts that Jesus and the Mother did in their existence. Jesus, because he was precisely the divine will, and Mary, because she did no act outside of it. Therefore, all of the Madonna's life has been, we can say, englobated in the divine will, possessed by the divine will, which has appropriated all the acts that the Madonna has done. This, obviously, also happened to Adam and Eve, before original sin, and obviously, also to the life of Luisa and of all those who want and will want to live in the divine will. Let's move on to the next passage, which makes us understand how Jesus is pleased with these hours of the Passion. It is the passage of November 4th, 1914. This is precisely the title, Jesus' pleasure with the hours of the Passion. I was doing the hours of the Passion, and Jesus, all pleased, said to me, my daughter, if you only knew the great pleasure I feel in seeing you repeat these hours of my Passion, and always repeat them again, you would be happy. And so, what is Jesus' explicit will in these volumes? That we read the hours of the Passion at Easter, once a year? No, the request is very explicit. I want you to repeat them always and to repeat them again. Because only with a continuous act does one arrive at possession. Therefore, the hours of the Passion should be done alone or in company. In a what? For example, with 24 other people, but in any case, everyone must start from their assigned hour, for example, the first, and each day do the following hour. Therefore, first, second, third for 24 days. Having arrived at the 24th day, what is done? What Jesus says is, one starts again from the beginning and does the first hour again. So, on earth, there will be all these living clocks, which will do nothing but actualize all that Jesus lived in his Passion. It is true, Jesus says, that my saints have meditated on my Passion, and the Church, with the pious practice of the way of the cross, teaches us this for 2,000 years and have understood how much I suffered and have dissolved into tears of compassion, so much so as to feel consumed for love of my pains, but however, not in such a continuous way and repeated so many times with this order. Here Jesus tells us, the repetition and the order make the difference, because by repeating them daily, Jesus relives in these souls his own Passion. Therefore, it is not a matter of remembering his sufferings to have compassion, which is a good thing. It is a holy thing. But today Jesus teaches us something that is better, that is holier, to actualize, to relive, to allow him to relive his own acts, his own words, his own prayers. All of that, in short, that he did in his 24 hours. So I can say that you are the first who gives me this so great and special taste. And you go, hour by hour, breaking down into you my life and what I suffered. Attention here too, because Luisa is the first, but then the others, who will come after? Will they be subsequent to Luisa? No, this also happens in the others. It's precisely a passage that speaks of this. Whoever lives in the divine will and acts, and therefore also reads, doesn't they? The hours of the Passion, but also the volumes doesn't come after because temporarily she came after. Let's say, because in time she came after. No, it is repositioned in the same act. So they are all first acts. So Luisa is the first, along with all those who will be first in reading and meditating on the hours of the Passion. And so it happens in all acts, because in God there is no sequence of acts. There is only one act, and it is a first act. Everyone is part of that one and first act, from which everything flows. And I feel so drawn, says Jesus, that now, hour by hour, I give you the food and eat the same food with you. So Jesus is drawn, attracted. He is, so to speak, forced to stay in the souls who want to meditate with his same will and united with him in these hours of the Passion, because it is his own life and he cannot be separated from his life. And I do together with you what you do. Here it is, the complete fusion, Jesus who comes to do what we do. When we meditate on the hours of the Passion, know, however, that I will compensate you abundantly with new light and new graces. This is the way to obtain those gifts necessary for the journey in the divine will. He himself equips us. He gives us, in those necessary graces, so that all our way of thinking, of acting, and therefore of dying, changes. And our will, let it no longer ask for what is opposed to God. But by changing the taste, says Jesus, putting disgust in the things that do not belong to me and making you love. Therefore, putting the taste in the things that instead belong to me, the two wills will be more and more united, until they become fused, one in the other. Therefore, what I want will be what you want, but also what you want will be what I want, because you will not ask me for anything outside of my will. And even after your death, whenever these hours of the Passion are made by souls on this earth, I in heaven will always clothe you with new light and glory. And this happens for everyone, because we all go to become part, as I said before, of that first act. Entering into the first act of God, we will all together be the first to have meditated, and being the first, it is right, says Jesus, that whenever there are people on earth who do these hours of the Passion, the first who have done them receive new light, new glory. Let's do the last passage, because I think it's already pretty clear, isn't it? How much Jesus cares for us. Jesus is making us fall in love with these hours of the Passion. But November 6th, 1914 tells us, whoever does the hours of the Passion makes Jesus' life their own and takes on the same office as him. So far we have said that Jesus came to do what we were doing in the hours of the Passion. That is, in meditation, in reading, in deepening the hours of the Passion. Now, instead, he tells us that whoever does the hours of the Passion takes on the same office as Jesus. That is, they go to do what Jesus did, or rather, what he still does, because he continues it in his sacra, in the sacrament of communion, continuing the usual hours of the Passion. My beloved, Jesus told me, My daughter, the world is continually in the act of renewing my passion, and since my immensity involves everyone, both inside and outside of creatures, so I am forced by their contact to receive nails, thorns, scourges, contempt, spit, and all the rest that I suffered in the passion, and even more. Now, in these few lines, Jesus has given us another piece of knowledge that, perhaps later, touched in what strikes us most. That is, the nails, thorns, scourges, contempt, spit, may have escaped us. The world is continually in the act of renewing my passion, says Jesus. Why? Because his immensity, his omnipresence, we can say, involves everyone. That is, everyone lives in the divine will. Look at the new concept Jesus is giving us today. So how is it possible that everyone lives the divine will? Obviously, because without the divine will there is no life. One cannot live without me. Jesus says in the Gospel, as you well know, you can do nothing. He doesn't say nothing good, but rather nothing. Nothing at all. That is, there is simply no life. Life comes from God in every instant of our existence. It's not that when we were born He gave us life, and then this system automatically continued on its own. No, in every beat of our heart, breath, in every movement that the blood makes in the circulation of our veins, everything, instantaneously, comes to us from God. God grants us all our existence. Our actions are all granted by God. But then, what is the difference with those who instead desire to live the divine will, seeing as how everyone is already in the divine will? The difference lies in not using the divine will as my servant. In order to perform my actions, even human ones if you will, even acts contrary to the divine will, I must use the life that the divine will, in every instant, is giving me. Therefore, I use the divine will as my servant, as my slave to achieve my goals, because without it I could do nothing. Now the passage is precisely this. The first point is to know that there is a divine will within us, something that at least we Catholics should have already understood, when with baptism we receive the divine life. But who knew how to use this divine life, and what were the means to nourish this divine life? And Jesus explains precisely this to us, that He is forced to be in everyone, precisely because of His omnipresence, of the need to give life to the creature. So, who live, however, using the divine will as their servant, as their slave, what do? They are always in the continuous act of renewing His passion, while those who have known the gift and who want to live in it, what do? They say to Jesus, let's do it together. Therefore, they do not use the divine will as a servant, but rather as the protagonist of their life. They give dominion, they give royalty, so that we can say to her, what do you want me to do? Let's do it together. And no longer, you do what I say, because life is mine. This is the passage that allows life to the divine will. And this is a passage of knowledge, until we have fully understood that the divine will, that Jesus, in the end, is found inside and outside of us, in each created thing, in each of our internal acts, in our very existence, as life, as body, as humanity, then we have not yet understood, in depth, what the teaching of the divine will is. But when this happens, then I realize that God's will is more intimate to me than I am myself, as Pope Benedict said in Deus Caritas Est. And when I realize this, it is clear that if I realize that there is another person living inside me, I begin to create a relationship with this person. I begin to ask myself, Lord, but what do you want me to do? What do you want to do with me and within me? Whatever you want to do, Lord, let's do it together. Because surely what you do is much holier, better, full of love than what I can do, who do not even know what is appropriate to ask. But you, who know everything, can direct my life, as you have planned it from eternity towards fullness, so that in our last moment of our life, we can say like Jesus, it is finished. What have I accomplished? I have accomplished that will which has lived in me and which has given me life continually in my actions. Now whoever does these hours of my passion, says Jesus, from the contact of these I feel the nails being removed, the thorns being shattered, the wounds being soothed, the spit being removed. I feel the evil that others do to me being repaid in good, and I, feeling that their contact does not hurt me, but good, I lean more and more on them. So they are a continuous reparation. And there's no need to say, I offer you these hours of the passion in reparation for all my sins, for those of the whole world, for the coming of the kingdom, for your glory, for the salvation of souls. Of course, if we are at the beginning of the journey, it is better to repeat these things to ourselves as an exercise, isn't it? To enter into and understand well what the effects are. But Jesus says, the mere fact of doing these hours does all this in me and allows me, or rather the soul, allows Jesus to do what? To relive them, and in reliving them, also reliving the effects of the acts he performed. And what are these effects? To remove the nails, to shatter the thorns, to soothe the wounds, and he feels repaid. Therefore, by giving God to God, that is, by giving Jesus his own passion, he gives us the merits, as if we had lived that passion ourselves. So you see how great and merciful the Lord is, how immense his love is. We are, perhaps, comfortably at home, sitting in a comfortable position. He has lived everything he has lived. But because we want to live these hours of the Passion with him, in his will, he gives us the same merits that he obtained from the divinity, that his humanity obtained from the divinity. And what does this do? It transforms us into other Jesus, gradually, with training, exercise, by repeating our acts, by acquiring more and more knowledge, because the effects depend on knowledge. He says, I feel that their contact does not hurt me. You see, while in others who do not do his will, who oppose him, he first received nails, scourges, thorns. In the souls who want to live in my will, and who therefore, through the hours of the Passion, actualize my very life, I do not feel pain in contact with them, but rather, says Jesus, I feel good to such an extent that I lean more and more on them. That is, God leans on his creature, finds rest in his creature. All of this, obviously, by virtue of his will, because if there were merits, the only one would be that of having decided to want to live in his will and to want to do these hours of the Passion. But here too grace has intervened to, as it were, push us, in the sense of convincing us to say yes to God. Furthermore, returning to the blessed Jesus speaking of these hours of the Passion, he said, my daughter, know that by doing these hours, the soul takes my thoughts and makes them hers, my reparations, prayers, desires, affections, even my most intimate fibers, and makes them hers, and rising up, between heaven and earth, does my same office. And, as co-redemptrix, says together with me, here I am, send me. I want to make reparation for all, to answer for all, and to obtain good for all. You know that, on the concept of co-redemption, the Church is still in discussion, right? Mary emerges from these volumes. That is, clearly, Jesus tells us very clearly, Mary was co-redemptrix with Jesus. But Jesus is not yet satisfied. His love finds no peace. It finds no pauses, no peace. It finds no pauses, in the sense that it always wants to give more. It is his perennial passion. And what other gift does he give us? That those who do these hours of the Passion in the way he told us before will be considered by him as co-redemptrix, having participated in his very acts. How is that possible? Jesus, we were born 2,000 years after you, but every time we live these hours of the Passion, in the divine will, he reactualizes them, lives them in the instant in which we read them, deepen them, live them in our turn. And so he shares with us those acts, which he lived, because, thanks to our humanity, which at this moment has allowed him to actualize them, he receives the effects as if he were alive, as if he were doing them at this moment. Something similar happens in the Blessed Eucharist, doesn't it? Where Jesus repeats all his Passion continuously. So, in the same way, in the living host, because that is what Jesus will call these souls in the living host, he can repeat all his life and therefore also all his Passion. Dear ones, today the Lord has made us know this other immense gift. As if 36 volumes were not enough, as if the pages she wrote and the gifts she left through Louisa's volumes were few, he has made us understand very well the value of these hours of the Passion and how the soul is called to a real participation, not to a remembrance. Not a remembrance of something I have lived, but to give him the possibility, through our humanity, to relive what he has lived. And so we could say that, at a certain point, Jesus will see us as a veil which hides his divinity. Because through this veil, he can do what he did 2,000 years ago with his own humanity. Therefore, always enclosed in the heart of the Mother, we must live this gift of the divine will. Let us not tire of continually desiring, of invoking that the divine will, in every one of our acts, may precede us, accompany us, and follow us, so that our whole life may be a single act of the divine will. And so we can say, at the end of our existence, It is finished. Everything has been accomplished by the divine will in me. Thank you all. A holy day in the Fiat.